Let me start by stating a disclaimer. The following content is purely my interpretation and speculation of the events of the anime/manga series Monster, particularly as it relates to the character of Johan Liebert. I've formed these ideas based both on viewing the entire anime as well as reading the ideas and theories of many other people, trying to piece together from it what might be Johan's true motivations and goals. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin. I'll be going through a kind of recap of the events of the story, but in a linear fashion, and speculate and analyze those events and their implication and meaning for Johan as a character. So, where Johan's story really seems to begin is when his and Anna's mother escapes with them and hides out in the Three Frogs in an attempt to free themselves from Franz Bonaparte and his intentions for the children. The mother dresses them both as girls, making it seem as if she has only one child. One can assume this is to protect their identity and to throw Mr. Bonaparte off their trail. In the process of doing this, however, she likely confuses Johan's sense of self-identification. This is when he begins to see himself and his sister as one person, two halves of the same whole. This is compounded by their mother never giving Johan or Anna an actual name. His sense of individuality and identification has already begun to erode due to his mother's decisions and actions and the actions of Mr. Bonaparte. Mr. Bonaparte eventually finds them and comes for one of the children in order to execute an experiment. This experiment is that they will take one of the children to the Red Rose Mansion and leave the other one behind, abandoned at the Three Frogs. He asks Johan's and Anna's mother to choose a child to be taken. Both Johan and Anna are dressed as the same person and are identical twins, thus making it very difficult to tell them apart. The mother clings to both of them, and they both beg her not to let go of their hands. The mother then jerks Johan forward, telling Bonaparte to take this one, but then jerks him back and proceeds to jerk Anna forward, saying no, this one. They take Anna, and then the mother abandons Johan, presumably because she's taken away by Bonaparte's men, which again is a part of the experiment. Johan is left alone, with nothing but the picture book entitled The Nameless Monster, in his memory of his and Anna's mother choosing one of them to be taken away. I think it's fairly plain throughout the series that Johan, despite his obviously frightening depth of intelligence, is also mentally much more fragile than Anna, and even, strangely, perhaps much more emotionally fragile. Anna, despite also being exposed to and experiencing many horrific things, emerges as an adult relatively well-adjusted. Johan, plainly, does not. It is at this moment in the story, after his sister is taken away and he is left abandoned at the Three Frogs, when Johan's sense of love and worth begins to erode, along with his already damaged sense of self-identity. His mother, by choosing to let one of her children be taken away, instead of refusing to let either of them be taken, and by showing her own uncertainty as to their individual identities, has shown to Johan that not all life is created equal, and that in the least one of them, either him or Anna, were disposable to her. This fatal choice, along with Johan's confusion about his own identity, brought about by being made to act and dress as Anna, coupled with his abandonment at the Three Frogs by his mother, and the story of the Nameless Monster, begins to have a deep psychological impact on him. He begins to feel, just like in the story, that he and Anna are the only two people left in the world. Anna escapes the Red Rose Mansion and comes back to the Three Frogs, where she finds Johan still waiting for her, still dressed as a girl. Johan asks Anna to tell him everything that happened to her, and she does. She tells him about all of the people that died at the Red Rose Mansion. The God of Peace story is also a metaphor or a reflection of Johan's relationship with Anna. Because of Johan's and Anna's mother dressing them as the same person to protect them, and because of her giving them no names, and thus confusing Johan's sense of self-identity, Johan grows to believe that he and Anna are one and the same person. The God of Peace story speaks about the god and the demon being one and the same, that when the god looks in the mirror, he sees the demon, and so Johan sees Anna as the god and himself as the demon, inseparable beings, essentially one single being. Johan realizes that they have to run away or Bonaparte will come back for Anna, and so begins his quest to erase both of their existences by getting rid of any trace of themselves. He burns down the Three Frogs and runs away with Anna. Later on, they encounter an older couple who gives them food and shows them kindness. We see the couple discussing what to do with the twins. They think they must have run away from home for a reason, but the man also thinks they can't possibly take them in as their own. implying that they're going to call the police or some other proper authority to come and get the children. Johan seems to understand that this is what they're going to do, as while Anna is picking flowers in a field, he goes and he kills the older couple. One can assume he does this as a means to protect Anna. He knows if they're given over to the police, in all likelihood they'll end up back with Bonaparte. After what Anna told him about what happened to her at the Red Rose Mansion, Johan seems determined not to let her end up back there again. They continue to run, Johan telling Anna that he has a good plan, until they make it to the Czechoslovakian border. There, Anna collapses from exhaustion, and Johan stops with her. She begs Johan to call her by her name, but Johan tells her he can't because they have no names. We see the psychological impact on Johan from all of these accumulated events and experiences. Mr. Bonaparte telling their mother that the twins aren't to be given names, indicating that she never did, or if she did, she never told them to the twins anyway. The influence of the picture book, the loss of self-identity, the lesson based on their mother's decision to let one of her children be taken away, the feeling that he and Anna are the only two people left in the world, and that he needs to protect her from being taken by Bonaparte ever again. The twins are found at the border, nearly dead from exposure by General Wolf, who takes them in and eventually has them sent to separate orphanages. Johan ends up in the infamous 511 Kinderheim, where the children are being experimented on in order to turn them into perfect soldiers for the German government. These experiments are based on the concepts and theories of Mr. Bonaparte and involve stripping the children of their memories and identities. They execute these very experiments on Johan, who, as we have already seen, had an incredibly shaky sense of self-identity. They begin to erase his memories, further stripping him of any sense of self he may have still had. We hear an audio tape later on of a drugged Johan talking to a psychologist. The psychologist asks Johan a number of questions. He first asks Johan his name, and we hear Johan say Johan, but then he begins to list several other names, Hans, Otto, etc., indicating he doesn't know his actual name at all. The names he lists are all names in the children's books written by Franz Bonaparte, the nameless monster and the god of peace. The psychologist then asks Johan what it is that he fears the most. Johan doesn't answer at first, and the psychologist asks a different question. He asks Johan if he's ever killed anybody. Johan gives a vague answer by saying he was reading a picture book waiting for Anna, and that there were so many dead people. We start to get our first glimpse of how it is Johan's memories are beginning to become confused by the experiments they're doing on him at the orphanage. He's beginning to confuse Anna's memories of the Red Rose Mansion with his own. He's beginning to believe that it was him who saw all of those people die at the mansion. The psychologist then asks Johan again what it is he fears the most, and Johan answers this time that the thing he fears the most is forgetting Anna. We hear him beg the psychologist not to take Anna away from him, as Anna is the only other person left in the world. This is the only time in the entire series where Johan sounds truly vulnerable and afraid. He pleads over and over, please, please, please. We see the desperate importance of Anna to Johan here, as up to this point he's had no real connection with any other person but her. Whatever connection he might have had to their mother was destroyed with his mother's decision to let one of them be taken, and then leaving the other behind at the Three Frogs. Johan eventually manipulates the other children at the orphanage and the orphanage's directors into killing one another. Johan and Anna are reunited after this incident by being adopted by a refugee couple called the Lieberts, after Johan insists that they take Anna in with him. Johan still shows a connection with Anna at this point, expressing to her that the whole world is hers because he's giving it to her. Anna seems happy about his statement. We see at this point Johan's entire purpose still revolves around his connection with Anna, and he still wants to protect her, is still intent on letting her have everything. However, Mr. Bonaparte eventually finds the twins at the Lieberts' home and asks to see them. The couple show Bonaparte the sleeping children. Johan is aware of this, and he gets out of bed and proceeds to kill the Lieberts. Anna finds him downstairs with a gun in his hand, their adoptive parent shot dead. Johan tells Anna he had no choice because the monster came. At this point, because of his confused memories due to the experiments done on him at 511 Kinderheim, Johan must believe that Bonaparte had come for him, not Anna. He thinks that because of his connection with Anna, he is drawing Bonaparte to them, and that because of that he is placing Anna in direct harm's way of being taken by Bonaparte too. He asks Anna to shoot him in the head, and tells her after she does it to wipe the gun clean of any fingerprints and throw it out the window, and after that he tells her that she has to run away as far as she can. He tells her it's alright because he is her. In his mind, they're one and the same person. Again, we see Johan's total loss of individual identity and confusion regarding his memories. His dying doesn't matter because he's simply an extension of Anna. He'll live on through her. Anna shoots Johan but doesn't run away. They're found by the police and brought to the hospital, where Johan is operated on by Dr. Kenzo Tenma and saved. Anna is traumatized by all of these events, and when she's brought to see Johan at the hospital, instead of showing happiness at his still being alive, she screams and runs away from him. We see Johan reaching out to her, a stricken expression on his face and tears running down his cheeks. This is really the breaking point for Johan, when he transforms into the nameless monster from the story. Anna was Johan's last real connection to life, to any sense of meaning in life, to any sense of purpose or identity or even humanity. By reacting to him the way she did, by running from him screaming, a seeming rejection, that last connection is severed. He's unwanted, both by his mother and now by his sister. He no longer can serve as her protector, and his own memories are utterly jumbled and confused. Johan begins to develop a true conviction in nihilism, the belief that there is no true purpose in the world or in life, that everything is meaningless and pointless, and that there is no reason to live. Johan decides the only thing to do is to destroy everything. His vision of the end of everything, a world with no meaning or purpose or connection, a world without identity for anyone, a world with no names. Johan sets about executing this plan by securing financial means and political influence to place himself into a position to accomplish the world's destruction. He manipulates several people and gains many followers along the way. The far-right extremists he's using believe he wants to see the rise of the Aryan race in order to take over the world. Johan in reality doesn't care about this at all. He wants to see it all destroyed, to become a place without purpose or meaning. This all changes, however, when Johan encounters the picture book from his childhood, The Nameless Monster, while looking through a library, and it reawakens his childhood memories of his mother, which were wiped out at 511 Kinderheim. We see Johan have a bad reaction, first screaming in seeming fear before collapsing and passing out. When he wakes again, he decides to abandon his plan to destroy the entire world, and instead decides to focus on killing Mr. Bonaparte and everyone associated with him. This is the beginning of his plan to wipe out his own existence. He believes Dr. Tenma will be the one to kill him, and he wants to put himself in a position where that death is inescapable, the perfect suicide, as Nina, also known as Anna, puts it. Nina realizes after talking to Johan that he somehow believed that her memories of the Red Rose Mansion were actually his, and because of this, she realizes that all of Johan's evil deeds were done in an attempt to protect her, which is why she says she wants to forgive him, and why she feels an awful sense of guilt that he became the monster he did, because she told him about what had happened to her, while simultaneously neglecting to tell him, as Mr. Bonaparte had told her, that he must never become a monster. She later realizes that on that night when they were children, when Johan asked her to shoot him, it was his way of seeing if he still had his connection with her, if he was still needed by her, and because she chose to shoot him, it severed that last connection, essentially sending him over that last edge into becoming the monster, by taking away his one last purpose. Nina doesn't remember at this point their mother's decision to first give Johan to Mr. Bonaparte, but then instead choosing her. This is the memory which only Johan has, and the one which began his descent into what eventually he became. Johan realizes from talking to Nina that the Red Rose Mansion memories aren't actually his, and he feels then that he has woken up, realizing that he and Anna are not the same person. One gets the sense here that Johan feels now that it would be best for Anna if he were to die and to erase all memory of his existence. Just as when they were children and he sought to protect her from Bonaparte by having her kill him. Ridding her of him now is the only way to express his love for her. We get a clue to this when, in the email sent to Anna at Dr. Reichwein's home, he calls her Nina for the first time, in essence acknowledging that she's her own person, separate from him. One might speculate that he feels his continued existence will only bring her further harm and misery, and this is the reason for why he's decided to change his plans of world destruction to simply destroying himself and all memory of him. When he believed himself and Anna to be the same person, or inseparable, his goal of destroying the world was based on the storybook The Nameless Monster. This idea of he and Anna being the only two people in the whole world, in a sense the only single being in the world, being two halves of the same whole. Anna being the one person in the entire series Johan shows any true love for, destroying everything and everyone in the world is his way of giving her everything. There's no one else to lay claim to anything if she's the only one left. Believing he's a part of her, or an extension of her. This relates back to his telling her as children that everything they saw was hers. But realizing they're two different people shifts his perspective and his goal, giving him a different vision of the end. Erasing his own existence by destroying everyone he ever encountered and then himself, leaving only Anna and Dr. Tenma as the two people who once knew him. He wants Dr. Tenma to kill him, thus proving his philosophy to Dr. Tenma that all life is without meaning or purpose, all life is not important, and that all people are equal in only one thing, death. He wants Dr. Tenma to see the world as he does, without meaning, an empty, desolate nothing, and to be as he is in that perspective. A world without identity, without names, complete isolation and aloneness. Again we see Johan express something unusual here. He says Dr. Tenma must kill him, and Johan's expression is one of sadness, even pain. Nina had described Johan's expression as she told him the truth of the Red Rose Mansion as unlike any expression she had ever seen, that he looked as if he were both laughing and crying at the same time. One might speculate that Johan is both laughing at the irony of his confused memories and the actions he took relating to those memories, and crying because of how utterly unnecessary he ever was to Anna's well-being. The only expression of love then, as Nina puts it, is to rid her of him completely. The perfect suicide, meaning not just killing himself, but erasing any trace of his existence at all, and leaving Anna as the only one left. Ultimately, I feel that Monster is about identity and love, and what the loss of those two things, what the loss of self-identity and the loss of a belief in love and of one having a meaning or purpose in the world, or to other people, can do to a person, how robbing a person of a sense of their own humanity can ultimately destroy them. So, that's my initial understanding and takeaway regarding the character of Johan Liebert, his motivations, and his nature as a character. Again, I would love to hear from any listeners in the comment section about their own ideas and theories regarding Johan and the story of Monster. Thanks for listening, guys, and I hope to hear from you in the comment section below.